So all the evidence points to the fact that there is a spiritual side to life. But how do we connect with it? Well, we connect through our souls. The soul is the spiritual part of the human anatomy, and the soul is also what integrates us as a person. If we want a healthy spiritual well-being, then we need to care for our souls. But what exactly is our soul, and how do we care for it? In his book, Soul Keeping, John Ortberg opens the book by telling a story about the keeper of the stream. I've recorded this on a video to the right of the one on this website. And in this analogy, John portrays the soul as a life-giving stream that flows through us, bringing health and vitality to our lives. But it needs tending so that it keeps bringing clean, unpolluted water into our lives. The trouble is that in our society we have lost sight of the soul. We've stopped caring for it, and we're far more focused on the self. John Ortberg says, in the 20th century, we've replaced community, society, church, and faith with a tiny little unit that cannot bear the weight of meaning, the self. And I think that's one of the reasons that people are becoming increasingly vulnerable to depression and anxiety. Recent NHS reports show that about 1 in 4 people will experience a mental health problem of some kind each year in England. About 1 in 6 people report experiencing common mental health problems like anxiety or depression in any given week. From 2017 to 2021, over those 4 years, there was a 50% increase in young children with mental health problems and a 72% increase in 17 to 19-year-olds with those problems. Between 2019 and 2021, the percentage of adults aged between 18 and 44 who received some sort of mental health treatment increased from 18.5% to 23.2%. We need to help people rediscover their souls and learn how to care for them. Dallas Willard wrote, "What matters most, what marks your existence, the really deep reason why human life matters so much is because of this tiny, fragile, vulnerable, precious thing about you called your soul. You are not just a self, you are a soul." As well as the image of the life-giving stream, another image that can help us to understand the soul is its role in integrating us as a person. Your soul connects your thoughts, your sensations, your emotion, your will, and your relationships, and integrates them into an entire being. The soul is not the floaty thing we see in cartoons that leaves the body. The soul is that which integrates the parts into a whole. And the soul always exists before God. It's rooted in the spiritual dimension. Sometimes we get glimpses of our soul at work. We have moments of awe at the beauty of nature, or a combination of joy, humility, and awe we might feel when we're holding a tiny baby. There is depth to those moments when our whole being says, "Wow," to the universe, a depth that's reachable only by way of the soul. If that's the soul, then what's the self, and what is the spirit? If we're going to understand the soul, then it helps to understand all the parts of the person. In his book, The Renovation of the Heart, Dallas Willard describes the parts of a person in the following way. Firstly, the mind. The mind is where a person's thoughts and feelings reside, so both our mental and emotional well-being are rooted here. Life is a series of experiences that we process through our minds, a constant flow of conscious and unconscious thought that's going on inside us. John Ortberg says that the mind wants to be at peace. It craves peace. We think we have to be somewhere else, or be someone else, or accomplish something more to find peace. But, he says, peace is right here when we get all the parts of the human being right and healthy. So the second part I want to talk about is the will. The will is what makes us a person and not a thing. Other words in the Bible that are used to refer to this same aspect of the person are spirit or heart. Spirit or heart. The biblical meaning of heart here is not the seat of our feelings. It's referring to the core of who we are. It's called the heart because it's at the core of our being, the centre of who we are. The will describes the function of the heart. It's the ability to choose, to say yes or no. The sort of freedom and creativity we have are all ways in which we express our will. And spirit can be a describing word for the will. For example, we might use the word spirited to describe a strong-willed horse, or call someone who chooses by an act of will, someone who chooses to be miserly, a mean-spirited person. Thirdly, the body. Our bodies are filled with all kinds of appetites and habits, which can be both good and bad. A habit is a learned behaviour that gets essentially offloaded to the body. It means that our wills and our minds don't have to be occupied by the processes involved in tying our shoelaces or driving a car. Our bodies have learned to do that by habit. Together, the will, the mind, and the body represent the self that I spoke about earlier. The fourth part of a person is our relationships. Our relationships with other people, even though they're outside of our body, become part of us. And as we explored last week, relationships are crucial for our health and well-being. And finally, the fifth part is the soul. The human soul is rooted in the spiritual, and it's what integrates all of our different parts into a single person. The soul seeks harmony. The soul is what connects. The soul integrates. That's why integrity is such a deep, soulful word, John Ortberg says. And he also says that in our society, we're obsessed with the self and we neglect our soul. For example, he says if you're stressed, you're told to go and take care of yourself. At a job interview or an audition, you're told to believe in yourself. If you're not getting your own way, it's stand up for yourself. If you're going on a date, who are you supposed to be? Yourself. If you're shopping for clothes, who are you supposed to express? Yourself. But what if your will and your mind and your body are all over the place so that your self is a disaster? We think of the self as a standalone do-it-yourself unit, but it isn't. To quote John Ortberg again, in the 20th century, we've replaced community, society, church, and faith with this tiny little unit that cannot bear the weight of meaning, the self. So what is the impact on our spiritual well-being if we're focused on the self and not on the soul? Well, we'll look at that tomorrow. I hope you can join us.